Hi again. Jonathan Butler's chapter in The Rise of Adventism, Adventism and the American Experience. He's just been dealing with the application of Revelation 13, the two-horned beast of Revelation, and the unique Adventist interpretation that the two-horned beast is Protestant America. He goes on, like the majority of Americans, Seventh-day Adventists believed the foundation of Americanism was unique and wonderful. They lauded the Founding Fathers and cherished the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution as ordained of God. They looked back upon a youthful and innocent America as, quote, the noblest and last offspring of time, unquote. Her religious freedom had nurtured that second great awakening of the early 19th century, out of which came Adventism itself. Her political freedom could benefit the entire world if allowed to spread. The beast was coming up, according to verse 11, that is of chapter 13 of Revelation, and J.N. Loughborough, another pillar of early Adventism, interpreted this as a figure of American progress. American railroads, steam engines, postal service, population, and territorial expansion were the great wonders of verse 13. The fire came down from heaven was the telegraph. Adventists used the remark that Ben Franklin tamed the lightning and Samuel Morse taught it the English language. But ironically, the lamb-like appearance of American freedom and progress was an illusion, said these Adventists. For like other Americans, Adventists felt the growing pessimism about America. And Adventists expressed this darkening mood in sharply prophetic terms. The American beast had possessed lamb-like horns from the 1770s through the 1830s, according to these premillennialists. But in the 40s and 50s, it had revealed its dragon nature. Its progress turned out to be a sham, for there were other American wonders of spiritualism, infidelity, apostasy, and crime. James White enumerated these societal problems and wrote with acerbity, "If this be the commencement of the temporal millennium, may the Lord save us from the balance." To the Seventh-day Adventists in the 40s and 50s, America was on the decline in two ways. First, its Protestantism. The lamb-like profession of Protestantism was that it had no creed but the Bible. In actual fact, Protestantism was a dragon of creedalism and heresy trials and the denial of academic freedom at its seminaries. The banishment of Millerites from the churches for their premillennial preaching was prominent in the Adventist vendetta against Protestants. Even more important for the Seventh-day Adventists was the Protestant attempt at Sunday legislation. On the Sabbatarian issue, Seventh-day Adventists were really kindred spirits of the evangelicals, as both preferred a form of the American Sabbath to the continental Sabbath, with the Seventh-day Adventist innovation more of a quantitative than qualitative difference at this point. But Seventh-day Adventists looked with foreboding on evangelical efforts at Sabbath reform, for it seemed to jeopardize the Adventist existence in America. The attempt by New England theocrats to reinstate an evangelical establishment while affecting the shape of Yankee Adventism appeared to Adventists to erode the American experiment in religious freedom. No national Sunday law threatened at the time. In 1829 and 1830, Congress had turned back a proposed Sunday law against mail delivery with such cogency by Senator Richard Johnson that the issue would not be raised again for half a century. There were state blue laws, and the Review and Herald frequently cited instances of hard labor and jail sentences for Sabbath keepers. Catholicism was an apocalyptic beast, but evangelical Protestantism was an image of the beast insofar as it mimicked Catholic intolerance and oppression. The Adventist interpretation of Revelation 13 was both anti-Catholic and anti-Protestant, though Adventists counted themselves among true Protestants. The Catholics may have been taking over the Mississippi Valley, as many Protestants supposed, but evangelicals clasped the East with an iron hand. Adventists were actually more concerned about the impact on America of an evangelical establishment than an alleged Catholic takeover. In 1856, Adventists editorialized against the Know Nothing Party, as R.F. Cottrell argued that it did no good to vote Catholics out of office because that only strengthened the Protestant position. James White added sometimes later that Know-Nothings were nativist as well as anti-Catholic, and therefore deserved no support from Adventists. Second, America was a dragon because of its so-called republicanism. America made the profession, wrote Adventists, that, quote, all men are born free and equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yet, Andrews, Loughborough, and the others pointed out that 3 million slaves were held in bondage in America, and therefore America's professed equality was a lie. Joseph Bates, erstwhile Millerite and then mainstay of Seventh-day Adventism, anticipated this prophetic disillusionment with America in a tract he wrote during the Mexican War, short-titled Second Advent Way Marks and High Heaps. Let's say that right. It's an awkward title. I'll say it again. Second Advent Way Marks and High Heaps. What? The tract was, on the whole, a pastoral recall of the way God had led his fledgling Advent movement in light of various prophetic waymarks. And then, while commenting on the third woe of Revelation, in Revelation 8 that is, Bates abruptly unleashed a vitriolic attack on the United States government for its present involvement in the Mexican War. Bates's diatribe sounded surprisingly Thoreau-like, that is, Henry Thoreau-like. He declared, the third woe has come upon this nation, this boasted land of liberty, this heaven-daring, soul-destroying, slave-holding, neighbor-murdering country. Murderers, said Bates, because this was a presidential war, unauthorized by Congress or the people. Like other anti-slavery Northerners, he saw the war as an expansionist effort to extend slave territory. Bates early personified the pilgrimage from apolitical Millerism to an implicitly political Adventism. In the 1850s, each new event seemed to verify, for Seventh-day Adventists, the dragon-like character of America. The fugitive slave law incensed even moderate Northerners, and Adventists, like others, appealed to a higher law than the federal one, refusing to return runaway slaves and, in some cases, operating underground railroads. John Preston Kellogg, a prominent Adventist who fathered two more prominent Adventists, John Harvey and W.K. Kellogg, that is of cornflake fame, engineered an underground railroad on his farm in southern Michigan. John Byington, who was to become the first General Conference president, may not have had an underground railroad station, as his family later claimed, though he certainly would have aided any slave that came to his doorstep in upper New York. Byington had been among the leading layman founders of the Wesleyan Methodist Connection. He spent 9 years in the fellowship out of sympathy for its unequivocal abolitionism and named 2 of his sons after noted abolitionists. Review and Herald editorials bemoaned the Kansas-Nebraska Act and followed closely the Lincoln-Douglas debates as the journal reprinted the full text of Lincoln's House-divided speech in 1858. Seventh-day Adventists chided Congress for its gag rule and the South for violating freedom of speech. At one point, M.E. Cornell sent in his evangelistic report to the Review and Herald and referred to the 4th of July, in closing, as the, quote, celebration of American slavery, alias independence and liberty, end of quote. John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry took on mythological significance for many Northerners, and Helen Harmon White, the prophetess among the founders of Seventh-day Adventism, regarded Brown's action as a serious attempt to free the slaves. According to Loughborough some years later, not reckless plunder, but a blow for liberty. Mrs. White, by this time, was quite outspoken on the slavery issue and told one Seventh-day Adventist that he would be disfellowshipped if he retained his pro-slavery opinions. Now we start into the Ellen G. White period. I'll put in a link to a playlist that we have done in the last year or so on the minds who made Jehovah's Witnesses, Nelson Barber and Charles Taze Russell, and the first video in that series as well.